If you've got a Bible, I invite you to turn to Luke chapter 15. We'll start reading in verse 11. Luke chapter 15. We'll start reading verse 11. Like I said, this is the first scripture reading last week. Gives us a little glimpse of what it might be like. Jesus told this story. He said, once there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of his sons said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between his sons. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had, and he traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him in the fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am, dying of hunger. I will get up, and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired hands. So he set off, and he went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and he put his arms around him and he kissed him. And then the son said to me, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Go quickly, bring a robe, the best one, and put it on him. And put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and let us celebrate. For the son of man was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field. And when he came and he approached the house, he heard the music and the dancing. And he called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, Your brother has come. And that your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound. Well, then he became angry. And he refused to go in. And his father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered him. He said, answered his father, Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. And I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. And then the father said, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God indeed. I've read this story so many times over the course of my career, and I think about the young kid, and all I can think about is the arrogance and the impertinence of that kid. And how much it must have disappointed his father. I mean, imagine going to your still living parent and say, Look, can you give me my inheritance now before you die? Yeah, go ahead and divide up everything you own and give it to me now. I'm too impatient to wait for you to die. Because that's essentially what this kid has done. Now that would have been bad enough. The father, of course, did it, and he gave it to both. But then for the young man to go and to squander everything that his father gave him on immoral pursuits, well, I mean, for heaven's sakes, who could endure such an affront as this? And yet, in this story, we learn that even after watching his son blow every dime that he had given him, watching him waste it all on wine, women, and song, still the father welcomes him home as a conquering hero. He welcomes him back. Give him a robe, the best one in the house, he says. Here, take a ring and put it on his finger. Go out and kill the fatted calf, the one that we were reserving for Christmas dinner, or whichever one, Mother's Day. Yeah, go get the one that we were reserving for Mother's Day. Get that one. Kill it and let us cook it and celebrate. So with great fanfare, the party was on, the celebration was happening, the prodigal son was home, all was forgiven, and everyone lived happily ever after. He came home. That's great news. Everyone was happy. Well, as we know from the story, not quite everyone was happy. Not quite everyone. No, watching this drama unfold was the loving father's other son. You know, the son who had dutifully stayed by his parents' side. The one who had worked himself half to death, making sure that the father might look upon him with favor. You know, the son who had watched his erring brother not only ask for his share of the inheritance, but then to go and squander it. That son, let's just say he was less than pleased with these turn of events. I love the story. I don't know if you paid attention to it. It's one of the things that I'm not going to labor here, but he is so angry. He is so angry about what has happened, he cannot even utter his brother's name or claim relationship with him. Did you notice that? He says, "This son of yours has come back." That's not what the servant said. No, the servant said, "Your brother's come home." But he is so angry, he can't even claim that relationship. He says, "This son of yours," he angrily spits at the father, "the one who has devoured your property with prostitutes." Prostitutes. He ate pig slop, for heaven's sake. You know what pigs are to us. They're the most unclean thing you can do. And yet, yeah, you threw a party for him? Oh, we can just hear the anger. We can hear the bitterness. It just drips in these words, which, by the way, are true. And the older brother is not lying. He's not exaggerating. He's not putting on. No, he has told the truth. But equally true is the father's loving response. "Oh, son," he says, "son, everything I own is yours." But we had to rejoice. We had no choice. We had to do this because this brother of yours, my son and your brother, this brother of yours was dead and now is alive again. He's been resurrected. He's come back. We had to celebrate. And that's where the story ends. There's no ending to it. Its conclusion hangs unsettled in the air. There is no happily ever after here. The story only leaves us with questions. We don't know, for example, if the older brother ever relented. We have no idea if he ever joined the party to welcome his brother home or if he stayed outside pouting. We don't know. Now, we tend to like a happy ending. We like a happy ending. So it's nice to think that he came and he put his arm around dear old Dad. And he said, "Gosh, Pop, you're right. Gosh, Dad, you're right. Let's go in and mend our family. Let's go in and make things right." That's how we like this story to end. We like a happy ending. But this is no Hallmark movie. This isn't a Hallmark movie. The guy doesn't get his girl in this story. There's no great reunion where everybody claps and laughs at the end while fireworks explode in the background. No, this is no Hallmark movie. This story has a conclusion which is much truer to life. Most of us have lives like this because hurt feelings are hard to overcome. Forgiveness is difficult to grant. And let's face it, friends, the older brother had reason to be hurt. The older brother had reason to be angry and bitter. He had stayed on the farm. He had done everything right. He had worked the fields. We have no reason to think that he did anything but obey his father. His father never argued with him when he said, "I have stayed here and I have done all that you've asked me to do." His father didn't say, "Oh, no. Remember that time when?" His dad didn't do that. His father didn't say, "Oh, no. He agreed with him. And yet, despite this, by his own testimony, again, which the father doesn't dispute, Never once was he recognized for his efforts. We talked about this in Bible study on Thursday. What was he really upset about? You remember, Bible study folks? What was he upset about?
He didn't get a party.
He didn't get a party. His father didn't throw him a party. All that I have is yours. I gave you half of your inheritance, just like your brother. Yeah, Dad, but you didn't throw me a party. You didn't give me a goat. So much as a goat that I might have my friends come over. Every goat I have is yours, son. Yeah, but you didn't recognize it. My feelings are hurt. Most of us have gone through life not getting a party. And our feelings are hurt. We watch other people get parties all the time, people who don't deserve it. We all work with that creep who got a raise that we didn't get. We've been in that office. We've been in that school where the bully gets an award for good behavior. We've been there. It's not fair. Who among us would blame the older brother if he had stood his ground and said, "Look, old man. Look, old man. You may forgive him, but I never will." I mean, who among us would blame him if that's how the story ended? I suspect many of us would agree that his brother had strayed too far, done too much wrong, and caused too much pain to deserve forgiveness. Friends, this is what makes being a person of faith so hard. No one is beyond forgiveness. No one is. That's the whole point of the parable of the loving father. The parable is not about the son who squandered everything. The parable is about the dad who loved him anyway. It's poorly named the parable of the prodigal son. It's supposed to be called the parable of the loving father. And that's good news for us. Because God's love is so big, it covers all sins, every last one of them. That means that everything that we have ever done to try to separate us from God's love and God's grace and God's forgiveness has fallen short. We can run far away, but we can't outrun God's love because God is love. Thus, the Lord's welcome when we come to our senses and come back home, when we finally realize that what God has done for us, His welcome for us is as extravagant, as unconditional as it was for the boy in this story. When we understand this promise and we claim it for ourselves, we can start living an abundant, peaceful, joy-filled life that God has planned for us. And that's great news for you and me. We are grateful to receive God's goodness, God's forgiveness. We come to the table and when we break the bread and dip it in the cup, we realize that body was broken for me. That cup was poured out for me. God loves me. He has forgiven me. Everything is built around me and what God has done for me. It is easy for us to cast ourselves in the role of the prodigal son who has come home to receive God's favor. It's harder to cast ourselves in the role of the older brother. It's harder to be there. It's more difficult for us to see ourselves standing outside pouting, refusing to grant forgiveness. But in truth, the other side of receiving God's forgiveness for our sins is learning how to grant it to everyone else. It's difficult to do, if it's not nearly impossible to do. After all, friends, some injuries have been done to us, whether they are physical, mental, or emotional, or just too painful to let go. Some of us have staggered through life having had terrible things happen to us. And now to be told that we're supposed to forgive the person who did it, it's just too painful. I mean, imagine, for example, the parents of those children shot at the STEM school this past week. How are they supposed to forgive that purple street tear fool who shot their kid? How am I supposed to forgive that kid? Or the parents of the Columbine? Let me tell you, Columbine was 17 years ago now. Do you think those parents have thought one day that they lost their child? The Virginia Tech shooting, the Sandy Hook shooting. These were babies. 22 elementary school age children were shot to death. And those parents, what are they supposed to do? How do you get over that? The Jews in the Holocaust, where an entire race of people was wiped out. You're telling me that I'm supposed to forgive Hitler? I'm supposed to forgive these people? How do we forgive those who've done such terrible things to them? In the song that Sean brought for us was written by a guy named Mark Miller. This whole I Can Only Imagine. He's the lead singer of the band Mercy Me. This is all based on his life. He was so abused by his father. He had suffered such abuse, he called his father the monster in the basement. Well, what about you and me and the monsters that plague us? We're all victims to something. Unfair workplace policies and promotions, bullying, accidents, injuries, bad diagnoses, failed relationships. These and much else besides will break our spirits. And once that happens, it becomes easy to begin building defensive walls around our hearts. Brick by brick, we build them, and we shore them up with a mortar of bitterness, and we cap them all off with a stone of anger. And if the wall is high enough, few will ever learn the secret pain we harbor. If we build it high enough and the wall thick enough, few will ever know. Why should they? When they understand, when they care, or rather than risk it, it's just easier to keep the pains to ourselves. Rather than risk it, letting people know, it's easier to keep it to ourselves. But friends, like so much else in the world, while that may feel like the thing to do, because it's mine, it's a trick of the devil. You see, I don't think it's an accident in this story. When the prodigal son returns, the one who loves him calls everybody together and says, let us celebrate. Let us come together. He invited everyone in. Why? Because restoration is a communal event. It is in each other's presence where the full expression of what it means to be the body of Christ is on display. We are stronger together because our individual stories and our gifts strengthen us all. And meanwhile, the shared struggles that we have give us reason to care for each other rather than work against each other. And God knows we in this country need reasons to work together, because we are one divided body of people in this country. We need reasons to come together. But when we stand on the outside looking in, when we are unable or unwilling to open ourselves up to each other, well, our defensive walls just grow thicker. Now, the rest of the world doesn't know this. To the rest of the world, we look fine. I mean, we dress up pretty good. We look pretty good. Or we look around the room and we say, gosh, I wish I had it together like that person. You ever done that? There's that one person in church, or that one person at the office, or that one person in school that we look at and go, gosh, I just wish I had that. We're always so together. The hair is always right. They always have the right clothes. They drive the right car. They live in the right neighborhood. I wish I had that. We have no idea what's going on behind the doors of their house. None of us comes in. We dress up good. So to the rest of the world, we may look fine. Meanwhile, inside of us is a swirling mass of chaos that is just waiting for something to trigger it so that we can unleash it all. But Lord, help us if it does, because when we lash out with misplaced anger or passive aggressiveness, then we cause more isolation and separation. Now people don't like us because we've lashed out in our pain. And more isolation and separation results. You know who loves that? Satan. Satan loves that. But what the devil hates is forgiveness, peace, reconciliation. When we do the extraordinarily hard and heroic work of forgiving someone else, and I'm not just exaggerating, it is not easy. And the world excuses it when we don't. The world thinks it's perfectly normal for us to harbor bitterness and anger to those who have hurt us, to carry our cross. It's my cross to bear. It's not what Jesus is talking about, by the way. The world thinks that that's a good thing for us to do, but when we do the extraordinarily hard and heroic work, it's a hero who does that, who forgives someone else for some harm perpetrated against them. When we do that work, love begins to take up residence where pain once was. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. Forgiveness is like faith. It's a journey rather than a destination. I always tell people, if you come forward and get baptized, that's just the beginning of your journey. It's not the end. Getting baptized in the church or joining the church, you don't say, oh, I'll make it. Now I'm a good person. No, it's just the beginning of a journey to where we try throughout our whole lives to grow. Well, forgiveness is the same way. We don't come to the moment and say, okay, you hurt me, I forgive you, now let's move on. I can forget that now. No, it doesn't. Because they're always reminders. It's a journey rather than a destination. In the story, both the prodigal and his father traveled far. The son literally went to foreign lands, and he traveled into the depths of despair when he forsook all of his cultural accommodations and wanted to eat pig slop. Meanwhile, the father traveled through a full range of emotions. But their journey towards healing began when the son came to his senses and humbled himself. Well, friends, when we do the same, our journey towards greater faith and the peace and comfort it promises also begins. But what about the older brother? Where is he? Well, his journey's at the beginning. He's left standing on the doorstep of the house, not going into the party. He has a decision to make. If he decides to embrace his anger rather than yield to love, if he decides to embrace the bitterness he feels towards his brother, his is going to be a long and lonely journey towards greater isolation. But if he takes the first step and forgives his brother, his life journey will be much more abundant. For then he will be reconciled not only to God, but to his brother as well. Now, none of this erases the fact that the words, I forgive you, are among the most difficult words to say. To say, I forgive you to someone who has hurt us is terribly difficult. Moreover, this is important. Write this one down. Saying, I forgive you, does not guarantee that the words will be welcomed or even received by the person you're saying them to. But offering forgiveness has less to do with excusing someone's misbehavior than it does restoring right relationship within ourselves. Let me say that again. It's really important. Saying I forgive you to someone doesn't excuse misbehavior. It's not its point. It's about restoring right relationship within ourselves. For as long as we hold on to grudges, as long as we refuse to grant forgiveness, we continue to be someone else's victim long after they've forgotten us. Long after they have forgotten us and who we are. This is not what God intends for our lives. No. The Lord has set a banquet table, and He has chosen a robe and a ring for us all. That means that the same wide open arms that welcome us home is extended to our enemies as well. Knowing that, there's only two ways we can respond. We can open our arms and offer forgiveness and join life's party, or we can cross our arms and turn our back and excuse ourselves from the revelry. Imagine if everyone did that. Imagine if we all did that. What a miserable world it would be. What a miserable world it would be. But now, imagine it would be like if we tore down walls of isolation. Imagine if we opened our hearts and joined life's party. Imagine if we did the opposite and joined life's party. Yes, friends, imagine that. Imagine forgiveness. Amen. Lord, I wish it were easy. We all wish it was easy. That if we could just wave a magic wand and sprinkle some fairy dust and all the hurts and the pains would go away. But sadly, Lord God, that's not the way it's ordered in our world. No, God, you have called us to do the hard work. We have the hard job of living into the righteousness which you modeled. For heaven's sake, you forgave the people who were crucifying you while you were on the cross dying for them. You modeled it. You call us to be people of love and grace and peace and forgiveness. Help us, Lord God, to do what is necessary to live into that, to start journeys of healing and wholeness, of peace and reconciliation. Help us, Lord God, to be no one's victims, but to be victors. Victors who love as we have been loved and who forgive as we have been forgiven, so that no one will have power over us except you. In your name we pray these things. Amen.